morning. My name is Charles Wagner. I am the founder of Gramazin, and this is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. And this is the very first episode in what I hope to be a series of podcasts about testimony sharing. From time to time, I hear people say to me, well, I don't really have a testimony. They're believers in Jesus Christ, but they say, well, I was never addicted to drugs, or I was never promiscuous, or I never struggled with alcohol. I didn't get in trouble with the police. I didn't go through a divorce. I was never experienced a great illness. I've had a pretty good life. So therefore, what kind of testimony do I have? I've got no drama. Well, I would argue that in itself is a testimony of God's grace. Perhaps you followed God's commands and obeyed his laws, and you walked with God all of your life, and therefore you stayed out of trouble. That's a testimony. That's a story we all need to hear. We need to be encouraged to follow God's precepts, God's commands, because they are good. They're going to keep us out of trouble if we follow them. That's a story worth hearing. But I think one of the reasons that people think that they do not have a testimony is they do not understand their rebellion from God. And I would like to cite an example of the white lie, right? We think that there are certain situations in which it's okay to be deceitful because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. We don't want to tell them something that will devastate them. So we just tinker with the truth just a little bit so that it's okay. All right? But I want you to know that the white lie is worthy of eternal death. The white lie is an act of outright rebellion and treason from God. Let's think of it this way. You have God's law, right? God's law says, under no circumstances are you to bear false witness. You are not to lie. You are not to deceive. But we come along and say, we don't want God's law. Instead, we have our own law, my law. And in my law, I say that it's okay to be deceitful in certain situations because I want to be nice to somebody. So I actually discard God's law and in favor of my own law, which says there's okay to lie to somebody at certain times. That is an act of outright rebellion against God. You are actually taking God's law, ripping it to shreds, and replacing it with yourself, your own law. What is that worthy of? That's worthy of eternal damnation. I'm sorry, that's a word people don't like, but hell is real, people. It's in the Bible, and Jesus himself talked about it. We are worthy of eternal separation from God. We're worthy of the eternal wrath of God because we took his law, ripped it up, shredded it, and replaced it with our own. So we are all guilty of this. We have all taken God's law, ripped it up, shredded it, and replaced it with our own. We're all worthy of eternal damnation. We're all worthy of God's wrath forever and ever. But so that makes us at the bottom of the barrel, right? We're no different than somebody who's been a drug addict. We're no different than somebody that's been in prison. We're no different from somebody that's been abusive. We were that low. We were that broken. We were that in need of rescue because we had offended the Almighty God. But he came down. He sent his son to die on the cross for our rebellion. How dare we rip up his law and replace it with our own? But he says, I will die on the cross for that rebellion so that the person can be forgiven and they can spend eternity with me. So if you're a believer in Jesus Christ and you think you don't have a testimony, boy, you sure do. You had committed outright rebellion and treason from God. You deserved his eternal wrath, and he reached down and through his son, Jesus Christ, saved you. You were at the bottom of the barrel. You could not get worse. You were a rebel from God. He came down and saved you. Every Christian has a testimony. If you don't have the drama of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, promiscuity, doesn't matter. You were a rebel from God and he saved you. That gives you a testimony. God bless.